Joan Park stared at the notification on his tablet, his stomach tightening. He had been assigned a Solidian to host under the new Cohabitation Act. As a private person who valued his solitude, this was his nightmare. "Just breathe," he muttered, scanning the document again. His assigned alien would arrive tomorrow, at 2 p.m. That gave him less than 24 hours to prepare his small one-bedroom apartment for a visitor from another world. June worked from home as a software developer, and his apartment reflected his lifestyle. Minimal, functional, and distinctly bachelor. The spare bedroom that could have housed his guest had long ago been converted into his home office. He would need to rearrange things. That evening, he cleaned frantically and researched Solidians online. The images showed tall, slender beings with luminescent skin that seemed to shimmer with a subtle inner light. Their features were humanoid, but with distinct differences: larger eyes that came in unusual colors, slightly pointed ears, and hair that moved seemingly of its own accord. The articles described them as a peaceful, highly advanced species seeking temporary refuge while their homeworld underwent environmental restoration. June didn't sleep well that night. He tossed and turned, wondering what his Solidian would be like. Would they be quiet and respectful of his space, or loud and intrusive? Did they eat human food? The government-issued pamphlet had been frustratingly vague on practical matters. At exactly 2 p.m. the next day, his doorbell rang. June took a deep breath, straightened his shirt, and opened the door. To his surprise, there were two Solidians standing alongside a stern-looking government official. "June Park?" the official asked, checking his tablet. "Yes, that's me," June replied, his eyes darting between the two aliens. One was slightly taller with a serene expression, the other shorter with an eager, curious look. "I'm Officer Kim. I'm here to complete the placement of your assigned Solidian." "There must be some mistake," June said, glancing between the official document and the Solidians. "I was only assigned one." The taller Solidian tilted her head slightly, causing her luminescent skin to shimmer in the afternoon light. "The housing algorithm matched us both to your residence. I am Neri." Her sister, clearly more animated, pushed past June into his small apartment without waiting for an invitation. "This is what humans call cozy, yes?" she asked, examining his living room with bright, curious eyes. "I am Hannah. We are grateful for your hospitality." June looked helplessly at Officer Kim. "But I only have one bedroom." The official sighed, clearly having dealt with many such situations today. "The Cohabitation Act is clear, Mr. Park. All assigned Solidians must be accommodated. Figure it out." With that, he handed June a thick manual labeled Human Solidian Cohabitation Guidelines and turned to leave. "Wait," June called after him. "There has to be some appeal process. My apartment is too small for 3 people." Officer Kim paused at the elevator. "The appeal form is in the back of the manual. Processing time is approximately 6 to 8 weeks. He stepped into the elevator without another word. As the door closed behind Officer Kim, June turned to find Neri carefully arranging a small crystalline object on his coffee table. It glowed with a soft blue light. "What is that?" he asked. "A communication device," Neri explained in a soft, melodic voice, "to connect with our community coordinator." Meanwhile, Hannah had already found his television remote and was experimenting with the buttons, causing the channels to flip rapidly. "Your information transmission device is quite primitive," she noted cheerfully, "but charming." June gently took the remote from her hands. "It's just a TV," he said, "and I'm really confused about why there are 2 of you. The notification only mentioned one Solidian." Neri approached him, her movements graceful and deliberate. "We are twins," she explained. "In our culture, twin bonds are sacred and cannot be broken. The algorithm recognized this and matched us both to you." "But why me specifically?" June asked, still trying to process the situation. "We don't require much space," Neri said softly. "Just proximity to you." 2. Me. June swallowed hard, taking an involuntary step back. Hannah grinned, her violet eyes twinkling as she joined her sister. Your bioelectric field is particularly compatible with our physiology. That's why we were both assigned here. Bioelectric field, June repeated, bewildered. Yes, Nari confirmed. Every human has one, but yours is exceptionally harmonious with Solidian energy patterns. It's quite rare, actually. June sank into his chair, feeling overwhelmed. And what does that mean exactly? It means we will thrive in your presence, Hannah said brightly. And you may experience some benefits as well. Improved health, clear thinking, better sleep. Assuming I can sleep at all, June muttered. Where are you two going to stay? I only have the one bedroom. The sisters exchanged looks. Your sleeping chamber will be adequate for all three of us, Nari stated matter-of-factly. June nearly choked. All three. In my bedroom. Solidians require proximity to their matched human during regeneration cycles, Hannah explained, as if it were perfectly normal. It's in the manual. June picked up the thick guidebook and flipped through it frantically. This is going to take forever to read. We can help you understand the important parts, Nari offered. We have studied human customs extensively in preparation. June looked around his apartment, trying to imagine how his quiet, orderly life would work with these two alien women in it. I have a team meeting tomorrow morning. What am I supposed to tell my colleagues? The truth, Hannah suggested. That you have been honored with not one but two Solidian guests. Right, June said weakly. An honor. Just then, his phone buzzed with a notification. It was his boss. Need to see you on video in 5 minutes to discuss the project deadline. June looked at the Solidian sisters, then at his cluttered apartment, then back at his phone. Perfect timing. As he set up his laptop for the call, Hannah wandered over, fascinated by the device. Is this how you communicate with your work pod? My team. Yes, June said, gently steering her away from the camera view. And I need you both to stay quiet and out of sight during this call, please. Nari nodded understanding and guided her sister to the kitchen area. We will prepare a nutritional offering while you communicate with your superior. Before June could ask what that meant, his boss's face appeared on screen. Park, we need to discuss the timeline for. His boss stopped mid-sentence, eyes widening. What is that glowing behind you? June turned to see the small crystalline object on his coffee table pulsing with increasingly bright light. In the kitchen, both Nari and Hannah had frozen in place, their skin beginning to shimmer more intensely as well. Ida got a new lamp, June improvised, quickly ending the call. Technical difficulties. I'll call you right back. He rushed to the sisters. What's happening? Initial bonding process, Nari explained calmly, though her skin was now glowing brightly enough to cast shadows. It will subside shortly. Hannah giggled, her entire form radiating violet light. Your energy signature is even more compatible than we thought. June stared at the aliens glowing in his kitchen, at his now messy living room, and at the thick manual in his hands. He sank into his chair once more, wondering how he was going to explain this at tomorrow's team meeting, and how he was possibly going to survive the 2-year hosting period. As if reading his thoughts, Nari's voice came softly through the glow. Do not worry, June Park. This arrangement will benefit all of us in ways you cannot yet imagine. Somehow, that didn't make him feel any better. Please don't touch that, June said, lunging across the kitchen to rescue his coffee maker from Hannah's curious hands. The Solidian had already removed the back panel and was examining the heating element with intense fascination. 3 weeks had passed since the sisters arrived, and his once orderly apartment was now a chaos of alien artifacts and misplaced human items. Crystal objects that glowed with strange colors sat on every available surface. His books had been reorganized according to some incomprehensible Solidian system. Even his refrigerator contents had been rearranged to create what Nari called energy harmony. I was merely attempting to improve its efficiency, Hannah said with a pout, reluctantly releasing the coffee maker. Your beverage would heat 42% faster with a simple adjustment. The last time you improved something, my microwave shot sparks for 3 days. Joan reminded her, carefully returning the coffee maker to its place. Nari, seated at the table reading a human history book, looked up. My apologies for our intrusion, June. We're still learning. June sighed as he poured himself a cup of coffee. He had quickly discovered that Solidians didn't sleep like humans. Instead, they entered a regeneration cycle once every 3 days, during which their bodies glowed intensely, and they became completely unresponsive for exactly 6 hours. The sleeping arrangements had proven most challenging. After the first night of June sleeping on his too small couch and waking with a terrible backache, Nari had explained that Solidians required proximity to a compatible human during their regeneration cycle. It's either share your sleeping space or will begin to deteriorate, she had explained clinically, showing him diagrams of Solidian cellular breakdown that had made him queasy. Now, each night, June lay stiffly on one side of his bed while the sisters occupied the other, their skin emitting a soft glow as they regenerated. He'd wake to find household objects floating around the room, a side effect of their unconscious telekinetic energy. Just yesterday, he'd had to duck to avoid being hit by his own alarm clock, drifting lazily through the air. Your stress levels are elevated, Nari observed, setting down her book. Would you prefer if we requested reassignment? Something in her voice made June pause. Despite the inconvenience, he found himself saying, "No, it's fine. We'll make it work." Hannah beamed at him, her violet eyes brightening. Excellent. I've been wanting to try this human custom called movie night I've heard about. June couldn't help but smile back. For all her chaotic energy, Hannah's enthusiasm was infectious. Movie night sounds good, he agreed. But first, we need to establish some ground rules about touching my electronics. Later that evening, as June set up the television for their movie, he reflected on how dramatically his life had changed. His work performance had actually improved. He found himself able to code for longer periods without fatigue, and solutions to complex problems came to him more easily. The sisters had explained this was a benefit of their proximity, though they remained vague about exactly how it worked. We have selected a film, Hannah announced, holding up one of June's old DVDs. This narrative about a large aquatic predator seems fascinating. June looked at the copy of Jaws in her hand and grimaced. Maybe something lighter for your first Earth movie. This one might give you the wrong impression about our oceans. We have studied Earth's biological diversity, Nari said, settling onto the couch. We understand that your great white sharks rarely attack humans unless provoked. Nevertheless, June said, taking the DVD and replacing it with another, let's start with something more uplifting. As the movie began, June sat awkwardly on one end of the couch, leaving plenty of space between himself and the sisters. But within minutes, Hannah had scooted closer to bombard him with questions. Why does the animated feline wear footwear but no other clothing? She asked, pointing at the screen. It's just a cartoon, June explained. It doesn't have to make logical sense. Fascinating cultural expression, Nari commented from his other side, having somehow moved closer without him noticing. By the movie's midpoint, June had given up maintaining his personal space. Hannah was practically leaning on his shoulder to get a better view, while Nari sat close enough that he could feel the strange warmth that radiated from her skin. It wasn't uncomfortable, he realized with surprise. When the movie ended, Hannah clapped with delight. Another, she declared. It's getting late, June yawned. Some of us need actual sleep, not just regeneration cycles. As they prepared for bed, following the awkward routine they'd established over the past weeks, June noticed Nari studying him with her penetrating gaze. You seem less resistant to our presence, she observed. June shrugged as he changed into his pajamas in the bathroom. I'm adjusting, I guess. "Your bioelectric field has already begun harmonizing with ours," she said when he emerged. "The process is proceeding more rapidly than anticipated." "Is that good?" he asked, climbing into his side of the bed. "Very," Hannah chirped, already settled on the far side. "Soon we'll be able to establish a complete symbiotic bond." "A what now?" June sat up straight. Nobody said anything about a symbiotic bond. Neri gave her sister a sharp look. "Hannah refers to the natural alignment that occurs between compatible energy patterns," she explained smoothly. "Nothing to concern yourself with." June wasn't convinced, but he was too tired to press the issue. He laid back down, keeping as close to his edge of the bed as possible. As he drifted toward sleep, he heard the sisters whispering in their musical language. Just before consciousness faded completely, he felt a strange tingling sensation spread from his chest throughout his body, not unpleasant, but definitely alien. He woke the next morning to find himself alone in the bed, which was unusual. Typically, the sisters were still there when he woke, either in their regeneration cycle or already alert and watching him sleep, a habit he found deeply unsettling. The smell of coffee drew him to the kitchen, where he found a surprising sight. Hannah stood at the stove, carefully flipping what appeared to be pancakes, while Neri set the table with plates and silverware. "You made breakfast?" he asked, stunned. "We accessed your memories during sleep to learn your morning preferences," Hannah said proudly. June froze. "You did what?" Neri shot her sister another warning look. "What Hannah means is that we observed your routines and consulted a human cooking database." "No, she said you accessed my memories," June insisted, suddenly feeling violated. "Can you read my mind?" The sisters exchanged a glance that spoke volumes. Finally, Neri sighed. "Not exactly," she explained. "During sleep, your bioelectric field is more open. We can sense strong impressions, particularly those related to comfort or distress. It helps us better adapt to your needs." That's invasion of privacy," Jun sputtered. "Is it not similar to how you monitor our regeneration cycles?" Hannah asked innocently, sliding a perfectly golden pancake onto a plate. "You observe us when we are vulnerable as well." June wanted to argue, but realized she had a point. He had indeed watched them during their regeneration cycles, fascinated by the pulsing light beneath their skin. "We should have explained sooner," Neri conceded, her expression genuinely apologetic. "Human concepts of privacy differ from Solidian norms. We will attempt to limit our receptivity to your impressions if it causes distress." June sat heavily at the table, running a hand through his hair. Just when he thought he was getting used to his alien roommates, they revealed something new that challenged his understanding of the situation. "The pancakes will get cold," Hannah pointed out, pushing a plate toward him. Despite his unease, June found himself picking up a fork. The pancakes were perfect, better than any he'd made himself. "Fine," he said between bites, "but we need to have a serious talk about boundaries." Both sisters nodded solemnly, though Hannah couldn't quite suppress a smile as she watched him enjoy her cooking. "Also," June added, pointing his fork at them, "no more floating objects in the bedroom. I nearly got knocked out by my own lamp last night." "We will practice control during regeneration," Neri promised. As he finished his breakfast, Jun realized with a mixture of alarm and comfort that he was actually getting used to having the sisters around. Whether that was natural adaptation or some alien influence on his bioelectric field, he wasn't entirely sure, and that uncertainty was perhaps the most unsettling adjustment of all. June Park sat at his desk, trying to focus on his work. The office had been buzzing with gossip since the Cohabitation Act went into effect 2 months ago. Many of his coworkers had been assigned Solidians, but June hadn't mentioned that he was hosting two. "Is it true?" Ta whispered, rolling his chair closer to June's desk. Ta worked in marketing and was known for spreading office rumors. "Is what true?" June asked, not looking up from his computer. "You're harboring 2 of them." Ta whispered harshly across their desks. "Men from accounting saw you at the grocery store, with 2 Solidians last weekend. Jun sighed. He had hoped to keep his unusual living situation private. I was assigned to due to a clerical error. It's being sorted out. Tai leaned closer. You should be careful. They're just using us until they can take over, you know. Jun frowned. They're refugees, Ta. Their planet is dying. That's what they want you to think, Tai replied, sliding away as their supervisor approached. Park, how's the new security protocol coming along? Ms. Kim asked, stopping by his desk. Almost finished, Jun said, grateful for the interruption. I'll have it ready by end of day. As Ms. Kim walked away, Ta gave Jun a meaningful look before returning to his own desk. Jun tried to refocus on his work, but Tae's words lingered in his mind. The sisters had been nothing but courteous. Well, Neri was always courteous, and Hana was at least well-intentioned, despite her chaotic energy. That evening, Jun returned home tired from a day of coding and office politics. He opened his apartment door to find Neri sitting cross-legged on the living room floor, surrounded by floating spheres of light. The spheres pulsed with different colors, creating patterns that seemed to respond to her breathing. We need to talk, she said gravely, her usually serene face tight with concern. Hana emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel. She had recently taken an interest in cooking human food, with mixed results. Today, she wasn't smiling or bouncing with her usual energy. Her serious expression immediately put Jun on alert. What's wrong? He asked, setting down his bag and sitting on the couch. Neri waved her hand, and the floating lights gathered into a single sphere before disappearing completely. We received a communication from our community coordinator today. Hana sat down beside Jun, closer than she normally would. The Department of Alien Affairs has issued new directives. Neri moved to sit on Jun's other side. Before we explain, there's something we need to tell you, something we should have told you from the beginning. Jun felt a knot forming in his stomach. What is it? Our High Council wasn't entirely honest with your government, Neri began. We didn't choose Earth randomly. Humans have a unique neural pattern that harmonizes with our species. What does that mean? Jun asked, remembering Ta's paranoid warnings. Hana placed her hand near Jun's, not quite touching, but close enough that he could feel the warmth emanating from her skin. Our species is dying out, Jun. Not just our planet. The proximity to compatible humans strengthens our life force. So I'm... What? A battery. Jun felt a chill run through him as he pulled his hand away. No, Neri said firmly. It's more like symbiosis. We gain energy, but humans also benefit from our presence. Have you noticed you require less sleep? Your cognitive function's improving. Jun had noticed. In the past few weeks, he'd been sleeping only 5 hours a night, but waking fully refreshed. Problems at work that would have taken him days to solve now seemed obvious. He'd assumed it was just him adapting to his new routine. The connection works both ways, Hana explained. Your energy field becomes stronger, more resilient. Your cellular regeneration improves. Many humans living with Solidians report similar effects. The government knows, Neri continued. They've been monitoring the physiological changes in humans hosting Solidians. Some officials see this as an opportunity. What kind of opportunity? Jun asked. Some want to study us, Hana said, her voice unusually quiet. Separate us from our human hosts to run experiments. They believe they can extract and replicate our energy without the need for cohabitation. They've already ordered one of us to be relocated, Neri said, pulling out an official-looking document. According to this, Hana is to report to a research facility tomorrow morning for extended observation. What? Jun took the paper, scanning its contents with growing anger. They can't just separate you. We can't be separated from each other either, Neri explained. Our sibling bond is part of our life force. Twin Solidians share a connected energy pattern. If we're separated for too long, we'll both begin to fade. And what about me? Jun asked. Would it affect our connection if Hannah leaves? The sisters exchanged a glance before Nari answered. Yes, the bond we've been forming is with both of us. Breaking it could have unpredictable effects on all three of us. June stood up and paced the room, thinking. This doesn't make sense. If the government knows about this symbiotic relationship, why would they risk damaging it? Because some humans fear what they don't understand, Hannah said. They see our presence as a threat rather than an opportunity for mutual benefit. June thought of Ta's suspicious whispers. How many others felt the same way? Were they pressuring the government to take action against the Solidians? There's more, Nari said hesitantly. The relocation order is just the beginning. We've heard from other Solidians that some have already been taken to these facilities. None have returned to their assigned humans. A chill ran down June's spine. What are they doing to them? We don't know, Hannah said, her voice trembling slightly. But the energy distress signals we've been sensing are troubling. June stopped pacing and looked at the sisters. Despite their alien features, he could clearly read the fear in their expressions. In the past weeks, he had grown accustomed to their presence, Nari's calm wisdom and Hannah's boundless curiosity. The thought of either of them being taken away to some cold government facility filled him with unexpected protectiveness. I won't let them take either of you, he said firmly. You can't stop them, Nari pointed out. The Cohabitation Act gives the government authority to reassign Solidians as needed. Then we won't be here when they come, Jun said, making a sudden decision. We'll leave tonight. Hannah's eyes widened. Leave? Where would we go? I have a friend with a cabin in the mountains. No one knows about it except me, Jun explained, already moving toward his bedroom to pack. We can hide there until we figure out what's really going on. You would risk your safety for us? Nari asked, following him. Jun paused, surprised by his own determination. Yes, whatever is happening, it isn't right. And besides, he hesitated, not sure how to explain the growing sense of connection he felt with them. It wasn't just physical proximity anymore. Something deeper had formed, something he couldn't quite name. We feel it too, Hannah said softly, as if reading his thoughts. The bond grows stronger each day. Then it settled, Jun said, pulling out a duffel bag. Pack only what you need. We leave in an hour. As the sisters hurried to gather their few possessions, Jun looked around the apartment that had been his private sanctuary just 2 months ago. Now he was preparing to flee with 2 alien women to protect them from his own government. His life had certainly taken an unexpected turn. But as he watched Nari and Hannah moving in perfect synchronization, their skin glowing slightly with nervous energy, he knew he was making the right choice. Whatever the truth about the Solidians might be, he was now part of it, for better or worse. The mountain cabin had been their home for 3 weeks now. Jun had taken emergency family leave from work, using his accumulated vacation time. The small wooden structure nestled among pine trees offered them temporary safety, but they couldn't stay hidden forever. They needed supplies. Someone's following us, Hannah whispered as they walked back from the small-town grocery store. Her violet eyes darted nervously to the road behind them. Jun had noticed the black car too, the same one he'd spotted parked near the general store yesterday. He adjusted his grip on the grocery bags, positioning himself between the sisters and the road. Keep walking normally, he said quietly. We're almost back to the trail. Once they reached the forest path that led to the cabin, they quickened their pace. The car couldn't follow them here, but Jun still felt uneasy. Their hiding place might be compromised. Inside the cabin, Nari helped unpack the groceries while Hannah paced anxiously, her skin flickering with nervous energy. They found us, she said. We need to move again. Not yet, Jun replied, booting up his laptop. First, I want to know exactly what we're dealing with. Since fleeing the city, Jun had been trying to gather information about what was happening with the Solidian relocation program. Now he had a plan. I'm going to access the Department of Alien Affairs database, he explained, fingers flying over the keyboard. My company designed part of their security system last year. I think I can find a backdoor. Nari moved to stand behind him, watching the screen with concern. Is that not illegal? Very, June admitted. But so is experimenting on sentient beings against their will. It took 3 hours of intense concentration, but eventually, Jun broke through the final firewall. Secret files flooded his screen, internal memos, research documents, and classified reports. There, he said, opening a folder labeled Project Stardust. What he found chilled him to the bone. He read aloud to the sisters. Project Stardust, harnessing Solidian telekinetic abilities for weapons development and enhancement of human capabilities. Nari's normally placid expression hardened as she read over his shoulder. According to these records, there are 37 of our kind missing from the official registry. They're experimenting on your people, Jum said, scrolling through horrifying research protocols, trying to isolate the source of your telekinetic abilities and transfer them to human subjects. Hannah stopped her pacing to look at the screen. Is it working? No, Jun replied after scanning more documents. The human test subjects are experiencing severe neurological side effects. And the Solidians, he trailed off, not wanting to describe what he was seeing. We need to help them, Nari said firmly. Our people are suffering. Jun continued searching through files until he found a location. The main research facility is at an old military base 50 miles north of the city, but it's heavily guarded. We can't just walk in. Perhaps not, Nari said thoughtfully, but with enough information, we might find another way. Jun spent the next 2 days gathering all the data he could find. Security protocols, staff schedules, building layouts. He created a secure encrypted channel to communicate with a few trusted friends from work, asking discreet questions about government security systems without revealing his purpose. That night, as they prepared for bed in the cabin's single bedroom, Jun noticed Hannah packing a small bag. What are you doing? He asked, though he already suspected the answer. I found them, she said grimly. The missing ones. They're being held at a facility outside the city. You found the exact location? Jun asked. How did you? We can sense our kind, Nari explained, joining her sister, especially those in distress. While you were gathering information through technology, we were reaching out through our energy connection. And now we must go to them, Hannah said, continuing to pack. I'm coming with you, Jun said, grabbing his jacket from the hook by the door. It's too dangerous, Nari protested, placing a hand on his arm. If you're caught, you'll be charged with treason. Jun looked down at her hand, feeling the now familiar warmth flow between them. In the weeks since they'd fled the city, the bond between him and the sisters had grown stronger. He could sometimes sense their emotions, even when they were in different rooms. And during their regeneration cycles, instead of objects floating randomly around the room, they now formed beautiful, complex patterns that seemed to respond to his presence. I'm not letting you go alone, he insisted. Besides, you'll need me to bypass the electronic security. The sisters exchanged a look, communicating in that silent way they had. Finally, Nari nodded. We leave in 1 hour, she said. They drove through the night in Jun's car, the sisters hidden under blankets whenever they passed through towns or checkpoints. By dawn, they had reached the outskirts of the city, and by midday, they were parked in a wooded area near the security fence of what appeared to be an abandoned industrial complex. That's it, Jun asked, studying the facility through binoculars. It looked surprisingly ordinary, a cluster of gray buildings surrounded by a high fence. Yes, Hannah confirmed. I can feel them. They're in pain. Jun checked his watch. According to the schedules I found, there's a shift change at 8 p.m. Security will be lightest then. As they waited for darkness, Jun reviewed the plan one last time. He would disable the electronic security system, creating a brief window during which the sisters could use their telekinetic abilities to open a maintenance gate. Once inside, they would locate the detained Solidians and assess the situation. "We're not trying to free everyone tonight," Jun reminded them. "This is just reconnaissance. We need to understand what we're dealing with before we can help them all." The sisters nodded, though he could tell they were eager to rescue their people immediately. Night fell, bringing with it a light rain that helped mask their approach to the fence. At precisely 7:55 p.m., Jun connected his laptop to a junction box he'd identified from the facility schematics. "Remember," he whispered to the sisters as his fingers flew across the keyboard, "if anything goes wrong, we retreat immediately. No heroics." At 8:00 p.m., Jun executed his program. The security cameras froze, and the electronic locks disengaged for exactly 3 minutes. "Now," he whispered. Later, huddled in the darkness outside a nondescript government building within the complex, Jun watched as Hannah used her telekinesis to disable security cameras one by one. The small devices sparked briefly before going dark. Nari, meanwhile, placed her hands on the locked door, her skin glowing faintly as she manipulated the internal mechanisms. The door clicked open. Jun checked his watch. They had 15 minutes before the security system would automatically reset. "Ready?" he asked, his hand finding Nari's in the darkness. She squeezed back. "Yes." Heart pounding, Jun stepped into the facility. The corridor was dimly lit and sterile, more like a hospital than a prison. But as they moved deeper inside, following Hannah's sense of her people, the atmosphere changed. Through windows in the doors, Jun glimpsed laboratories filled with strange equipment. In one room, a Solidian was suspended in a tank of glowing liquid, monitoring devices attached to their body. "This is worse than we thought," Nari whispered, her voice tight with horror. They turned a corner and found themselves facing a large double door marked Primary Research Wing. According to Hannah, most of the missing Solidians were being held beyond this point. Jun checked his watch again. 8 minutes left. "We need to hurry." As Hannah reached out to open the doors with her telekinesis, a voice behind them made them freeze. "I've been expecting you." They turned to find a woman in a lab coat standing in the corridor, flanked by 2 security guards. She looked at them with clinical interest, particularly at the sisters. "The twin bond," she said, as if confirming a theory. "That's how you found us, isn't it? Fascinating." Jun stepped protectively in front of Nari and Hannah. "What are you doing to these people?" The woman smiled. "Creating the future, Mr. Park. A future where humans can benefit from Solidian abilities without the need for cohabitation." "You're torturing them," Nari said, her voice cold with anger. "We're studying them," the woman corrected, "for the greater good." Jun felt Hannah tensing beside him, preparing to use her telekinetic abilities against the guards. He subtly touched her arm, warning her to wait. They were outnumbered, and he suspected there were more guards nearby. "Now," the woman continued, "I believe it's time for you to join our research program. Twins are particularly valuable subjects." As the guards moved forward, Jun made a split-second decision. He pulled a small device from his pocket, a remote trigger he prepared as a last resort. "Take one more step," he warned, "and I'll release everything we found to the public. Every file, every experiment, every violation of both human and Solidian rights." The woman's smile faltered. "You're bluffing." "Try me," Jun replied, finger hovering over the button. In that moment of tension, with guards approaching and alarms beginning to sound as the security system reset, Jun realized how completely his life had changed. From a solitary programmer to a fugitive fighting the government conspiracy, all because 2 alien sisters had been assigned to his apartment. And he wouldn't change a thing. 6 months after the night they broke into the facility, Jun sat in a conference room at the newly established Human Solidian Alliance headquarters. The building stood as a symbol of how much had changed. 6 months ago, he had been a simple programmer living alone. Now he was Delegate Park, one of the leading human representatives in the new cooperative government. He reviewed his notes for the upcoming presentation, trying to focus despite the memories that kept surfacing. That night at the research facility could have ended very differently. When the alarms had sounded and more guards arrived, it had seemed like they would be captured. But June's bluff about releasing the files had worked just long enough for Hannah to disable the guards with a telekinetic pulse that knocked them unconscious. They had escaped, but not before Nari had managed to connect telepathically with the imprisoned Solidians, promising to return with help. And they had kept that promise, though not in the way they had planned. Rather than staging a rescue mission, June had released all the files to trusted journalists and human rights organizations. The evidence of illegal experimentation had caused an immediate public outcry. Protests erupted worldwide, with humans and Solidians standing together against the abuses. The scandal had forced the highest levels of both governments to intervene. The rogue military operation was shut down, its leaders arrested, and the captive Solidians freed. More importantly, it had compelled the Solidian High Council to finally reveal the complete truth about their species' situation and their reasons for coming to Earth. "Delegate Park," a voice called, pulling June from his thoughts. He looked up to see Nari in the doorway, dressed in the formal attire of a Solidian ambassador. The flowing silver garment highlighted the natural glow of her skin, which seemed brighter and healthier than ever. "The council is ready for your presentation," she said with a small smile. After months of working together professionally, she still maintained her serene demeanor in public settings, though June knew the warmth that lay beneath it. Hannah appeared behind her sister, still favoring human clothing over Solidian garb. Today she wore a bright blue suit that somehow complemented her violet eyes and luminescent skin. "I added some improvements to your presentation graphics," she said with a wink. The energy flow diagrams were a bit dull. June sighed but couldn't help smiling. "Hannah, we agreed you wouldn't change anything without telling me first." "You'll like these changes," she insisted, bouncing slightly on her toes with characteristic enthusiasm. "Trust me." June gathered his tablet and stood. "The last time I trusted you with my presentations, the projection turned into an interactive light show that distracted everyone from the actual content. The delegates loved it," Hannah protested. "They said it was the most engaging budget report they'd ever seen." Nari placed a calming hand on her sister's arm. "Perhaps we should focus on today's presentation. It's rather more important than a budget report." She was right. Today's meeting would finalize the new symbiotic relations protocol, officially acknowledging the mutually beneficial nature of human-Solidian cohabitation and establishing ethical guidelines for the relationship. The protocol would replace the old Cohabitation Act, with its forced assignments and governmental oversight. As they walked together to the council chamber, Jun reflected on how his life had changed. What had begun as an unwanted government mandate had transformed into something he couldn't imagine living without. The sisters were now an essential part of his life, and he of theirs. The scientific studies conducted since the formation of the alliance had confirmed what the three of them had discovered through experience. The bond between compatible humans and Solidians strengthened both species. Humans gained improved health, cognitive function, and even limited telepathic abilities in some cases. Solidians received the energy they needed to survive away from their dying world, and their own abilities were enhanced through the connection. But beyond the biological benefits, there was something more meaningful that had developed, a deep understanding between two very different species. Friendships, partnerships, and even some romantic relationships had formed between humans and Solidians. The initial fear and distrust were giving way to genuine connection. "Nervous?" Nari asked quietly as they approached the grand doors of the council chamber. "With both of you here?" "Never," Jun replied, and meant it. Their presence gave him a confidence he had never possessed before. The chamber was an impressive sight, a circular room with seating for hundreds of delegates from both species. At the center stood a platform, where June would present the final version of the protocol. As they entered, conversations hushed, and heads turned their way. June had become something of a celebrity since the exposure of the secret experiments. The media had dubbed the three of them the Triad, the first and most famous human Solidian bonded group. Children asked for his autograph. Politicians sought his endorsement. Scientists wanted to study them. It was all very strange for someone who had once valued his privacy above all else. "Ready?" Hannah whispered, squeezing his hand. June nodded and made his way to the platform. As he began his presentation, he noticed that Hannah had indeed modified his graphics, but this time her changes actually improved the clarity of the complex information. The three-dimensional models of energy exchange between humans and Solidians rotated gently above the platform, beautifully illustrating the symbiotic process. When he finished speaking, the chamber erupted in applause. The vote that followed was unanimous. The Symbiotic Relations Protocol was officially adopted. Humans and Solidians would now enter a new era of cooperation, with voluntary partnerships replacing the mandatory assignments. Hours later, after countless handshakes and congratulations, June finally escaped the reception with Nari and Hannah. They returned to their apartment, a spacious three-bedroom that had been provided by the Alliance, though they still shared the master bedroom out of both necessity and choice. "We did it," Hannah said, flopping onto the couch with uncharacteristic fatigue. The day had been long and emotionally taxing for all of them. "Indeed," Nari agreed, more composed but with clear satisfaction in her voice. "The protocol will protect both our peoples." June loosened his tie and sat between them. "I still can't believe how much has changed in 6 months. Do you regret it?" Nari asked. Being thrust into all this, June thought about his old life, quiet, orderly, and solitary. He had been content then, or thought he was. But now he understood the difference between contentment and genuine happiness. "Not for a second," he answered honestly. That night, back in their now larger apartment, the three of them settled into their shared living space, no longer strangers forced together by law, but a family forged through crisis and compassion. As they prepared for bed, following the routine that had become familiar and comforting, June felt a deep sense of peace. "The Council has approved the next phase of the Planetary Restoration Project," Nari mentioned as she changed into her sleeping clothes. "In 50 years, our homeworld may be habitable again." "Will you go back?" June asked, trying to keep his voice casual despite the sudden tightness in his chest. The sisters exchanged one of their meaningful glances before Hannah answered. "Our home is here now. With you." Besides, Nari added practically, "the bond we formed is permanent. The distance would be uncomfortable for all of us." June felt relief wash over him. "Good," he said simply. As June drifted to sleep between the softly glowing forms of Nari and Hannah, he smiled at the floating objects around the room. A book here, a small crystal there, all gently orbiting above them in perfect harmony. Once an annoying side effect of their regeneration cycles, now a beautiful reminder of how the unexpected could become essential. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. There were still those who feared the Solidian presence, still details of the protocol to implement. But tonight, in this moment of quiet connection, everything was exactly as it should be. His last thought before sleep claimed him was how strange and wonderful life could be. A government mandate that had seemed like the end of his privacy had become the beginning of the most important relationship of his life. Not with one alien, but with two who now shared not just his bed, but his heart.